Your life is like kind of being on a big treadmill and gets faster and faster the more and more hectic your life gets.
And even though you're moving at a frantic pace, you actually seem to spend less and less time doing the things that you value the most.
Exactly, and you get out of balance, and that's, you lose your harmony, and then you kind of feel like you've lost the purpose of what your life's all about.
Well, sometimes changing your life in order to get back into balance seems too difficult and overwhelming. Well, that's what we want to talk about today. It's not necessary to change your whole life in order to restore balance.
Exactly. The key to making it work is just one step at a time. Small, achievable steps.
Jonathan Duffy spoke with Professor Laurie St Ledger about what causes us to lose balance.
Laurie, is it more difficult for people to find balance in their lives these days?
It sure is. We've got a number of factors impacting on individuals, families and communities that put a lot of pressure on the individual and the family unit. Some of the really interesting ones relate to our forms of communication. We now have access to all forms of communication: mobile phone, internet, international television, and so therefore we have on our agenda all sorts of issues that were never there before. And we try and process these, many of them badly, and so this often has an impact on how we perceive things. It also has a downside in that it's actually reduced the amount of physical activity that people take. They spend a lot of time over computers, they spend a lot of time on the net, talking to people, they spend a lot of time on the phone. And so we're seeing actually an increase in overweight and obesity and early onset diabetes, simply because people are not as active as they used to be. We're also seeing impacts on food because the family unit now often has both parents, or if they're single parent families, the parent is working. There's a lot of pressure on the individual children with demands at schooling, peer pressure in terms of getting reasonable grades to get into tertiary education and get career options and choices, because we know the better the education, the more employable people are. So this has put a lot of pressure on people to stay at home, to work very hard at studying, often without connections to adults. And so consequently we see in young people lack of physical activity, eating fast food, some of which is not very good with respect to their nutritional value, and so overweight, obesity, and often a lack of connectedness with their peer group, where previously they had a whole lot of good relationships that were enjoyable and that were fun, but now their connection is much more around achievement and being under pressure.
What has the increase in technology done for health?
What often happens with better access, though, is people become the worried well, because often they can't process a lot of the information that they get from computers, from television. There's also a concern that a lot of the material that's on the World Wide Web is not authenticated and may be used to sell products. So people are concerned about their health. The real dilemma is many of them don't know what to do about it. Or if they do know what to do about it, they don't have the time or the resources to be able to take that step to make that change, whether it be for themselves or whether it be for their family. And therefore this puts pressure on them, and you often find people feeling guilty. They know what should be done, they know perhaps how to do it, but then they can't make the decision, or they don't know exactly what changes they have to make in their lives to actually implement what they want to achieve.
Is it possible to obtain balance in our lives with all the external pressures on us?
Well, funnily enough, they can. And it's really interesting. Some of the best changes that people have made and some of the best ways of getting people's lives back in balance are things that you do with members of your family and you do with members of your community. You don't have to take it all on board yourself. For example, I talked earlier about young people being more overweight, exercising less, etc. In many countries now we have this phenomenon called the walking bus, where a group of adults in the local community will actually pretend they're a bus, and they will pick up kids from their homes and take them to school. And they've got various stops where these kids are collected. But the pickup is that they all walk. And what happens is they have topics and they talk about these different things, so kids start to relate to one another that they would not normally have met. There's an opportunity for interaction. There's an opportunity to make friends. But the lovely thing is they get to talk to other adults besides their parents, and other adults get to talk to one another. It's free, it's costs nothing, and it's come about because people have made some action at local level. And the advantages in individual health and wellbeing are incredible. Not only do the kids get advantage because they start to lose weight, they start to get exercise, but the adults start to meet new friends, and they've got a sense of connection with young people that some of them don't have because many of these people are retired. And the young people all of a sudden get to connect with older people where perhaps their grandparents and members of their extended family live a long way away. So that's a lovely little example of how communities and individuals can be proactive to do things for their own individual health and for the health of others, and the advantages are incredible.
That's such a great example of when people work together, everybody benefits. It's these simple little choices built up over a whole lifetime that really makes a difference to your health.
The best prevention for disease is to live a healthy, balanced life. But what do we actually mean by health? Are we just talking here about the absence of disease, or does it go deeper than that? Jonathan caught up with author and health psychologist Marie Caltabiano.
Health can be considered to vary along a continuum ranging from premature death at one end through to optimal wellness at the other. Biomedicine has typically been concerned with treating symptoms once the person is ill, but a holistic approach to health emphasises the importance of maintaining balance between the physical, the social, the intellectual, the emotional and the spiritual aspects of self. If we take a biopsychosocial approach in understanding health and illness, then three sets of factors need to be considered. Biological determinants, or for instance, one's genetic predisposition to get a certain illness, like for instance breast cancer. Psychological factors such as health beliefs, health values, health attitudes, general expectancies about health behaviour and our motivation to change health risk behaviours. And of course there are the social factors such as peer influence to engage in risky behaviours like taking drugs, and the social connectedness during times of stress. In order to achieve wellness, the person first needs to be aware of any health damaging practices. They may be required to learn new skills in order to effect lifestyle changes, and they also need a supportive environment to make those changes.
Optimal health is not simply the absence of disease, it's effectiveness and fulfilment in all aspects of our lives.
Because all aspects of our lives are interconnected, it follows that we can't look at one aspect of our life in isolation from the others.
The state of our health stems from our physical, social, psychological, emotional, intellectual and spiritual well-beings.
This is where we need a holistic approach. Wellness means achieving the optimal balance in all aspects of your life.
I haven't been on a seesaw since I was a kid.
All the more reason to get on. It's okay, I won't throw you off, Kylie.
Is there a point to this?
Well, we've been talking about all the aspects of our lives being in balance. If all the areas of our lives are interconnected, an imbalance in one area affects all the other areas.
Oh, like a seesaw.
Exactly. One end out of balance causes all the rest to be out of balance.
You made your point now, can I get down?
No, I haven't finished yet.
Oh.
We're talking about the need to balance our physical, emotional, social, spiritual and intellectual health. So let's hear from Australian medico and author John Tickell about the importance of physical health.
Woo!
John, how important is our physical health in establishing life balance?
How important, Jonathan? Very important. In my ACE program, ACE, Activity, Coping, Eating, the A is activity. It's 1/3 of life. And isn't it sad, like 80 years ago, we used to move, we all used to move, and now we don't move, we just sit behind desks. I mean, look at the longest living race of people in the world. the Okinawas. They live in a group of islands off the southern end of Japan. There's no age differentiation. If they're 30, 40, 50 or 90, they're out in the fields every morning working. There's no rest homes, there's no coronary care wards because they're active people, and it doesn't matter how old they are, they're active. I mean, let's look. The centre of you is your heart. If your heart is not going, you're not going, right? Your heart needs blood and oxygen. How do you get the blood and oxygen flowing? You move. Your brain is the nerve centre of your body. How does it work? Through blood and oxygen. And if you're static, you're not... I mean, if you go for a walk, you can find a solution to a problem a lot easier than just sitting down because of the movement. You've got 600 muscles in your body, 180 joints. People, their muscles become flabby, the joints take the pressure, we get arthritis. The Okinawas don't get arthritis. I mean, the whole movement thing is so important and it's so easy, we just don't do it. Do you know the most used drugs in the world are for anxiety and depression and sleeplessness and all that sort of stuff? And yet the greatest drug we have is activity. Because if you're moving, I mean, the studies have shown us that if somebody's depressed, the best thing to do is to get them out walking, moving, and the depression lifts. So it's a lot better than drugs for the coping thing. And then when you look at eating, people who are active eat better than people who are inactive.
What role does diet play in our balance?
Well, Jonathan, I hate that word diet. Diet is a four-letter word and it's a bad one because as soon as you mention diet to somebody, they think of pain, you know, a painful routine. So I talk about eating plans and attitude changes. So let's put diet over there. Now, E is the E in the ACE. That's the eating bit, right? My great rule of nutrition is 2/3, 1/3. What we've got to attempt to do is get people across that line in the middle where most of their eating is plant-based and a lot less flesh and refined foods, because that's what Western people live on. And it's interesting, you know, when you look at Australia and America, we're now in the top 5 in the world at getting cancer. We're very good at getting cancer. And yet I travel the world and I look at the race who don't get the cancers and their eating is plant-based. So 2/3 of the food you put in your face should be plant-based. People say, like what? Vegetables, fruits, grains, nuts, seeds. I shoot for 15 different plant foods every day. Even one grape counts. People say, 15, that's a lot. No, no. The Okinawas do 18 or 20. I mean, for breakfast I had 4 or 5 different fruits, a couple of grains, so I'm 7. Lunch I'll be going to a salad bar and I have a little bit of grain bread and this and this and this. I'll hit another 5, so I'll be 12. And then at night I'll have a piece of fish or you know, a lamb chop and 4, 5, 6 vegetables. I've hit my 15. I'm safe. Micronutrients, they're all in the plant. Less flesh, more plant. That's the basis of solid eating, and hey presto, you lose weight.
Ta-da! Perfect balance.
When it comes to exercise, we often defeat ourselves by trying to take on too much too soon. You know, you don't have to go for a 10K run, just do something small. Maybe take the dogs for a walk or take a swim in the ocean. Why don't you walk the kids to school?
And at work, try taking the stairs instead of the lift. Take that lunch break, get out in the sunshine, get some vitamin D, unwind. It's all the little things that add up.
They sure do. The most important thing for you in exercise is that you find something physical that you like and do it every day.
The next factor in our life balance is social relationships. John Cunningham is a social psychologist at Macquarie University.
John, how does social relationships impact upon life balance?
Well, entire generations of people have been raised to believe that diet, exercise, vaccinations, and other forms of preventive care are the only ways of avoiding disease and prolonging life. Now, certainly these are important, but the idea that the ability to live together, that is, to maintain harmonious human relationships, seems strangely unscientific. Yet the evidence is abundant and undeniable that the quality of our social lives is intimately tied up with our physical and mental health. Now, it's become commonplace to observe that humans are inherently social creatures. Undoubtedly, these sociable tendencies contributed to human survival throughout history, and they continue to do so today. But perhaps it's interesting to note that scientific interest in the adaptive values of social ties has reached a peak now, when the stresses of modern life seem particularly tenacious, and social bonds, unfortunately, seem quite tenuous. has been shown scientifically, for example, that those people who have larger social networks live longer lives and indeed live healthier lives, particularly if their social networks not only are large but are also well integrated. That means that not only do they have many people in their networks, but that those other people know each other as well. So it's important not just to have family and friends, but also to be a valued member of a community. So it's not just a matter of the quantity of social connections that people have, but also the quality of those connections. And the quality of those connections is what we call social support. As well, it's important to recognize that social support is not just a one-way street. As adults, if we need other people's help, we feel obliged to be available to offer them help when they need it. So it's a reciprocal kind of relationship. Some people may see this as an added burden on top of the obligations they already feel towards their work lives and their family. But that feeling of being needed by others strengthens people's sense of self-worth and gives them added purpose in life. We need others, but also other people need us.
When times are tough, it's our friends and family that support us through it. After all, no one's an island, but we need a broad social network. For example, if we socialise only with people that we work with and we change jobs, we lose our whole social life. We know that our wellness is affected by the way we see ourselves, our perspective on life, and how we view others. Jonathan Duffy caught up with Ian Grant.
Ian, what role do emotions play in our life balance?
I think they play a very powerful one. I think they're I call it the energy expression. And there's a very simple formula that I find very helpful. Your actions come out of your feelings, and your feelings come out of what you're telling yourself, and what you're telling yourself is what you believe. So the feelings, which are really the emotions, they're in that chain. And I think if you can get control of your emotions, now I don't mean you shouldn't be angry, but if you can control your anger so it's not destructive, and emotions are that energy. So I think you need to go back down that chain and what you believe. If you believe that you were brought up in a stink family and you're a victim, that will affect your emotions terribly, and they will put energy into your physical, your mental, your social, and your spiritual dimensions of your life, you know? And it's like a car and a fire in a house. They are the most carefully designed. The fuel tank of a car is carefully designed, and so is a fireplace. It's carefully designed because fire can warm, but it can also destroy. So emotions can be the energy that gives you that personality everybody wants to be around, or they can make you the personality nobody wants to be around. And that's why you need to look at your emotions and say, hey, are they in tune? Are they being harnessed correctly? Are they being channeled right? And I think that's a healthy thing to do.
How does a person with negative emotions go about turning them into positive emotions?
People don't mind giving you free advice, and you've got to take criticism and accept it as good advice. And I had trouble in my marriage because I do my television shows, and after that I just want to hear good things. And my Mary is a tremendous programmer. She gives me information, and she'd say, honey, what a shame you forgot that part and that. And I'd blow up and say, you know, didn't I do anything good? And what I had to find out, I had a misbelief, and my misbelief was the thief that was robbing me of relationships. And the saying is true, with your misbelief, find out what it is. And my misbelief was I was telling myself, hey, I'm not good at anything. And when I found out that misbelief, then I faced it, I traced it, and the old saying was you erase it. But if you do that, something worse comes in its place. So you trace it, face it, and replace it. And I replaced it by simply writing a list of all the good things I can do, all my talents, and saying, hey, thank you, God, I can do some things good. And I got rid of that misbelief, because the misbelief will be the chief thief that will destroy your relationships with other people.
If you've never actually sat down and made a list of your talents, I'd really recommend it. Because if we feel good about ourselves, it flows on to every other aspect of our lives. Because it's important to give time to ourselves, not just to others. Take the time to relax, to have a hot bath, to spend time without the kids. Because if we can manage to do these little things, it shows that we're in control of time. and in balance. Keeping an emotional diary is another good way to record strategies on actions to take. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a hot bath to take. Here's John Darcy to talk about intellectual balance and the importance of giving your brain a good workout.
There's no doubt about it that the activity in your brain really assists you to keep on going. It keeps you going in so many different ways. There's distinct evidence that if you do crossword puzzles, if you're involved in any form of intellectual activity, it doesn't have to be academic, any form of intellectual activity, reading the newspapers, listening to the radio, chatting, talking, communicating, digging the soil but not too deeply, but keeping it going, is terribly important in maintaining the ability of your brain to keep on going. You know, the old saying, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And there's very good evidence to suggest that that is the case. The important thing, I think, is that you don't have to be an academic. You really don't have to be looking at the philosophical causes of this or the philosophical causes of that. It's just that you've got to keep it going, not allow quiescence to take place in your brain, just like you shouldn't allow quiescence to take place in your muscles. If you don't use it, you lose it. And it's so true of the brain, just like other parts of the body. Now, as you grow older, for example, there's clear evidence that those people who play checkers or chess or whatever, or play sport, active sport, do better when it comes to that dreadful thing called dementia as they get older. But it's not just old people who benefit from an active mind. Drag it back in time. It's the same thing when you're 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. It doesn't matter. It's an enormously important thing for all of us to realise that no matter where we are, no matter what we do, whatever job we have, from a domestic situation to being a hairdresser, we've got to keep the old brain going. And that doesn't mean reading the glossy magazines once a week. That's the wrong way to travel. Find a book, read the book, talk about the book, share a book with a friend. It doesn't matter. But keep the old brain working and you'll achieve balance.
Keeping your mind active doesn't mean you have to study astrophysics.
Reading books, learning computers, doing craft activities, playing Scrabble will all help you keep your mind active. It should be something you enjoy.
And then there's the other aspect of well-being, the spiritual. We spoke with health specialist Alan Handysides. That was checkmate.
No way.
How does spirituality relate to creating a balance in our lives?
We as humans are spiritual beings. There's no culture, no group of people that doesn't somewhere seek a spiritual type of relationship. And if we want to be balanced people, we have to recognize that these needs exist within us. And if we don't recognize it, we will be unbalanced. Well, there are many, many studies that show relationships of all kinds give us an increased resilience, give us increased capacity. And there are countless examples of people who, because of their belief in God, have been able to withstand all kinds of ordeals and difficult situations. There is, however, some scientific evidence that shows that people who have a spiritual basis of life cope much better with illness. Our worldview, our concept of ourselves, how we fit into the order of things, is very important if it's going to give us equilibrium and peace. Now, equilibrium and peace are other words that can be used to think of as balance. When we look at a balance bar on a fulcrum, it is at rest, and it is not moving, and it is calm. There comes to the person who has a firm belief in his or her God a sense of balance and peace and rest from the trouble and the strife. And there are so many people who are troubled with anxieties, perplexities, ambition, pride, and come to the realization that there's a sort of futility to it all. I've seen many, many wealthy, powerful men and women, when they come to the end of their life, question the value of it all. You know, there are many people who achieve all kinds of success because they have specialized in something. I had a patient whose husband was a weightlifter. He was a champion weightlifter of a region. I won't say who it is in case he would be identified. But his physical prowess didn't give him satisfaction. I have had academic people who can achieve great levels of academic achievement, but not necessarily feeling at peace and completely at equilibrium with the world. We, all of us, have to sense our position and our meaning and our role in life. And spirituality is that which gives us meaning. And if we don't have a meaning, we're going to be in difficulties in achieving balance, peace, a calmness, and a sense of satisfaction of having lived a purposeful life. And so I would think that spirituality is that component of our life that gives us that sense of position in the universe, if you want to think of it. And there are many different ways of looking at spirituality, but it does give us that central position of belonging and having meaning in our place.
Nurturing our spirit is just as important as exercising our body. For some, that may mean time for prayer. For others, a quiet walk in nature. Whatever way we choose to do it, our spirituality gives us a sense of purpose and belonging. And with that, our sense of worth. So to achieve our perfect balance, we need to tie together the physical, emotional, psychological, intellectual, and spiritual. In other words, our mind, body, and soul. Not eating the right foods during the day can be a vicious cycle. By the end of the day, we run out of energy. Then we're too tired to do physical exercise. Then the guilt kicks in. And before you know it, you're reaching into the fridge for some comfort foods. Know the story? Achieving balance is vital in achieving health outcomes. Now, Adventists, because of their commitment to health, have been the subject of large-scale health studies. One of the most extensive and comprehensive of these is the Adventist Lifestyle Study. Jonathan spoke with one of the investigators on this important study, Terry Butler.
Terry, with all the emphasis placed on living a balanced lifestyle, is there actually evidence that says living a healthy lifestyle results in improved quality of life?
Definitely. There's a lot of evidence from right around the world. I suppose going back 50 years ago with the Framingham study was really the very first modern study that demonstrated that lifestyle was very much related to disease outcome and quality of life. And from that study, there have been numerous population studies where we've looked at large groups in different parts of the world, here in North America, Japan, and Europe, and Australia, and others, that have found that people who live a certain lifestyle have certain qualities of life, less disease, and a better outcome.
Terry, you're involved with the Adventist Lifestyle Study, which is one of the largest studies in the world. Why Adventists?
Most of them do not smoke cigarettes as a control group, and they very quickly found out that Adventists had about 20% of risk of lung cancer compared to the rest of the population. So this was one of the results that came out in the US Surgeon General's report in 1964. Then there was another study in 76 that looked at lifestyle a lot wider than that found some fascinating things about how your diet, your lifestyle, your exercise, the whole way of life can actually reduce the risk of disease and give longer life and better quality of life as well. One of the fascinating things that came out of this was the 5 factors that Adventists who followed those compared to the rest of the population had a much reduced risk of disease and in fact lived longer as well, 10 to 12 years longer. And they were the fact that they ate plant-based diet, maintained normal body weight, had regular exercise, did not smoke, and ate a few nuts as a part of their diet.
So, everyone can enjoy the benefits of a healthy lifestyle. We know that a diet based on vegetables, fruit, legumes, nuts with monounsaturated fats can prevent disease. It can lead to us living longer, having less heart disease, cancer and other illness. Not to mention contentment and peace of mind. Cheers. Here's to a full life. Okay, so you want to make some changes to your lifestyle, but here's the nitty-gritty. It just seems too overwhelming, too big. Where do you start? Well, the good news is that even thinking about change can be the start of the process. And once again, start small. An expert on the stages of change is Professor James Petraska from the University of Rhode Island.
Jim, all of us have got our life out of balance at some point or other, and we want to make change to bring our lives back into balance. How do we go about creating that change in our lives?
No matter what habit we want to change, we know that it involves progressing through a series of stages. The first stage is called pre-contemplation. This is a stage where people are not intending to take action in the foreseeable future. They may want to change, but they're not intending to, sometimes because they're demoralized, sometimes because they're just not ready. These folks tend to underestimate the benefits of changing, and they overestimate the costs of changing. So to help them, what we do is we encourage people to take and have a list of benefits, like of exercise, and to have that list grow. So they may first have 5 benefits. We know there's over 50 benefits. As that list grows, it means they're progressing to the next stage. Next stage is contemplation. This is a stage where they're intending to take action in the next 6 months, but it tends to be marked by a lot of ambivalence. Is it worth it? Is it not? Should I put it off? Should I not? And the general rule of thumb for these folks is, when in doubt, don't act. So they will put it off. Here, the kind of practical thing would be to take small steps. Rather than to go all the way, like with quitting smoking, they would take and delay their first cigarette by 30 minutes. They would take and quit for 24 hours in the next month. And those small steps will help them progress to the next stage. That's called preparation. Here, folks are ready to take action in the next month. Their biggest concern is, when I act, will I fail? And that's a realistic concern. Because with chronic habits, with chronic behaviors, the rule of thumb on any action attempt will be to relapse rather than to continue to progress. And a lot of people in preparation think the worst will be over in a few weeks or a few months. It actually means taking about 6 months of concerted effort to change our lifestyle. So, for example, we encourage people to think of these changes as a behavioral equivalent of life-saving surgery. If they were going through a life-saving surgery, would they give themselves 6 months to recover? Would they let other people know they're not going to be at their best during that 6 months? And would they let other people know they need more support to get through that tough time? After about 6 months, they can start to ease up. They don't have to work as hard. But during that 6 months, it's important that they get enough support. It's important that they take and reinforce themselves for the progress that they're making. It's important that they substitute healthy alternatives for unhealthy alternatives. For example, no-fat foods for high-fat foods. Once they've progressed through the 6 months, they then have moved into the maintenance stage. And here, what they need to be prepared for is what will be the most common cause of them relapsing back to the unhealthy habits and unhealthy lifestyle. And we know across all health behaviors, the #1 cause of relapse is emotional distress. Times of depression, times of stress, times of loneliness. And we know that most people tend to cope with distress by unhealthy habits. Eating more junk food, drinking more alcohol, smoking more cigarettes. And so what we want them to do is to have a plan. When you're distressed, what are the healthy ways that you can cope with it? For example, we know exercise, excellent way to cope with depression, to cope with stress. We also know that some form of deep relaxation, whether that is prayer or meditation or yoga, some way of letting that stress and distress leave the body. And then the other best alternative is seeking social support, having people that you can talk with about those times of distress. So our ideal goal is to have people reach the termination stage where the problem has ended. No temptation, no matter whether I'm depressed, anxious, lonely, bored, no temptation to go back to unhealthy ways, total confidence that I won't go back. Some folks reach this stage, and that's great. For others, it's more of a lifetime of maintenance.
So if we have a relapse, do we have to start back at stage 1?
Well, that's very important. The biggest mistake we can make when we relapse is to give up on ourselves and our ability to change. Fortunately, we know that most people, when they relapse, about 85% go back to either contemplating or preparing. So they are working to take and get ready to take another action attempt. And what we very much encourage them to do is to think of this as a learning experience. What did I do right? What mistakes did I make? What do I need to do differently the next time that I go to take action?
I find that stages of change model very empowering. You start off just thinking you would benefit from change. Then, when you're ready, you begin to contemplate it. You start to think, how can I go about making this work? Then, when you're ready for action, you take small steps, one at a time, and watch it grow. Maintenance is keeping it alive. And the important thing is not to regard a setback as a failure. Most people, when they have a minor setback, don't need to go right back to scratch. They tend to pick up the process by either contemplating or preparing for change.
When we're trying to find the right balance in life, it's important to take time out. Time out for ourselves and time out for those that we care about. Reaching the best balance in your life is perhaps one of the most difficult goals to achieve and maintain. When your work, rest and play gets out of balance, you feel worn down and stressed out. So what's the best way to start to change ourselves? James Petraska has some ideas.
Can we make multiple changes in our life at once? Or do we have to start with one change at a time?
The good news is that we've discovered in recent years that people can make multiple changes and be just as successful as when they're just targeting one behavior. But it's not that they take action on multiple behaviors. If they're ready to take action on one behavior, great, run with that. In the meantime, they're progressing on another behavior where they're in pre-contemplation or in contemplation. So once they stabilize that first behavior, they're now ready to take action on the next one. So it's like too much action can overwhelm you, but most people aren't ready to take action on multiple behaviors. They're ready to progress on multiple behaviors, and that will pay off over the long term.
Start by assessing where you're at. There may be 5 things you want to do to give yourself a better life.
But you don't have to do them all at once. What's the most important of those values?
Which aspect of your life can you start making changes in today?
And take that one aspect that you can change this month to make your life better and go from there.
By making that one choice, you'll be on the road to giving yourself a better quality of life.
You know, we're all individually responsible of taking charge of our own health.
Good luck, and thanks for watching.
Well, that's it for our program. We're going to leave you with a very inspirational John Tickell. Goodbye and stay well.
I've come up with a little thing here. I look at this word life. That's what life's all about, life. And if you take the F out of life, what have you got left? A lie. You're living a lie. So many people are living a lie. And I sit with people and I say, now, if you had 3 months off, nothing to worry about, no stress, no money, no nothing, what would you do that starts with F? What would you put back into your life to make your life complete again instead of this living a lie? And I've now got 20,000 responses from around the world, and the top 4 in order are family. People would spend more time with their family. They'd have more fun. They'd spend more time with their friends, friendships. And the big one now, big mover, is faith. Faith, you know, the Okinawas, spirituality has always been part of their life. What were they? Family, fun, friendships, faith. Put the 4 Fs back into your life and you've got a life.